Hey, what's going on, people? So I just wanted to go over a story I just happened to come across. It was from a few months ago, but it's still ongoing. But it's basically just showing the corruption of the police department in the Louisiana, one police department uh, in Louisiana, and it just goes to show, you know, whether you black, white, or whatever, it's some sick people that work in the force, and you're gonna see it needs to be some kind of. First of all, I said this before. Most people don't like to be held accountable. When you hear about people talk about integrity and responsibility, it's really just cap. Most people, in these positions and just in life in general, don't have the discipline and don't have the integrity to even live by the words that they spew out there. And a lot of these people are psychopaths and sociopaths and worse. Just pretty much just pretending to be normal. And when you look at this police officer that was involved in this case, looks like some kind of sociopath or psychopath here. So let's get into it. And then fair use.
Claim one man could be in two places. A Plaquemines Parish deputy appears to claim one man could be in two places at once, both at the scene of a crash and watching the Super Bowl.
As we uncover in our new investigation, despite what appears to be clear video evidence in the case, the legal battle has dragged on for more than a
So
year.
he say
A
clear video
frequently
evidence.
sanctioned sheriff's deputy swore in an affidavit the person you see in this video, frequently sanctioned sheriff's deputy. A frequently sanctioned sheriff.
Frequently sanctioned. So this guy has had multiple complaints against him already. Yet he's still in the force, from what I understand.
Sheriff's deputy swore in an affidavit the person you see in this video is the same person you.
Now you can clearly see this guy has hair. It's very skinny. This guy is a heavy set white guy. This guy might even be Hispanic.
Swore in an affidavit the person you see in this video.
Now he's saying the sheriff deputy swore in the affidavit that these events were proven and he can verify they're true. He swore to them.
A frequently sanctioned sheriff's deputy swore in an affidavit the person you see in this video is the same person you see here. It just so happens these images were taken at the exact same time of day, nearly 23 miles apart.
I believe it was done maliciously.
That deputy told a judge the picture you see now is high.
And just you're gonna hear more, but it just shows you how some of these people are so sick they'll put you through anything just to. I mean, there's sick people out here, man, and to avoid taking responsibility and accountability, they'll try to ruin somebody's life.
High quality video surveillance. He
Now we
told
can
a
clearly see
judge the
that's not high
picture you
quality.
see now is high quality video surveillance. Those claims help lead to Jared Folks being arrested, locked up in this cell for nearly 72 straight hours. No shower, no sunlight, little food.
I was on concrete for 3 days, didn't get to brush my teeth.
This story starts on Super Bowl Sunday 2022. As the Bengals and Rams began the second quarter, Folks had workers for his construction company finishing up a job in Plaquemines Parish, installing spray foam insulation.
And was this an actual employee of yours or a sub?
A subcontractor of mine.
So it didn't even work for your company?
That's correct.
The worker's truck got stuck between the gates of the Park Plaquemines subdivision.
As he goes through the gate swings inward and lodges in between the cab and the flatbed.
Folks says he contacted the general contractor.
I said, the gate has malfunctioned. Do you have contact information for the homeowners association? That way we can reach out to him. And he said, I'm at a Super Bowl party. I have an email. I can send it to you in the morning. He said, basically free the truck and we'll contact the, homeowners association and get the repairs done to the truck.
Folks says he emailed the homeowners association, but shortly after heard from a Plaquemines Parish Sheriff's deputy, Vincenzo Sonato.
I got a call. It was from a cell phone number, and I explained to him what happened. I explained to him I was watching the Super Bowl at home, and
Vincenzo is
it was
the
from a cell
officer
phone.
or the deputy that's had the complaints against him, and they'll go into that several complaints.
but shortly after heard from a Plaquemines Parish Sheriff's Deputy, Vincenzo Sonato.
I got a call. It was from a cell phone number, and I explained to him what happened. I explained to him I was watching the Super Bowl at home, and I explained the steps. I explained that I got the text message. I immediately contacted, the general contractor on the job, and I requested the HOA information.
Folk says the deputy asked him to send him text messages.
We got off the phone the first call, and I reached out to my attorney. He said, no, we're not going to send them, private text messages on this. You're the victim. Your company's truck is the victim. So at that point, he called back the following day, is the victim on this. You're the victim. Your company's truck is the victim.
So he got
said,
advice from his attorney,
he's
not to actually send him the personal text messages.
said, no, we're not going to send them, private text messages on this. You're the victim. Your company's truck is the victim. So at that point, he called back the following day, and he was pretty aggressive. And he said, I'll have you arrested for hit and run if you don't cooperate in this investigation. I said, well, listen, let me three-way in, my attorney, and that way, we could discuss it. At that point, he said, oh, you're uncooperative. Hung up the phone.
A few days later, Deputy Sonato secured this arrest warrant. Again, here's the video Plaquemines Parish is using to prove its case. They say this is Jared Folks and proves Jared Folks drove his work truck, adding the parish is using to
Now they weren't even there, and they put up this report. It's a hair color brown. He's bald head.
prove its case. They say this is Jared Folks and proves Jared Folks drove his work truck, adding the incident was captured in high-quality video surveillance. He even wrote Folks told him he was in a hurry to get home to watch the Super Bowl. Problem is, Folks said he never told the deputy that. Instead, Folks said he wasn't the driver, and he was actually in Kenner watching the Super Bowl at the time of the incident. Here's video of Folks in his office in Kenner. There's the timestamp. You can even see the Super Bowl playing in the right.
This is the other thing. When you deal with liars or just anybody at this point, because whether the person be a politician, whether the person be a teacher, whether the person be somebody that works for one of these government agencies, a police officer, anybody, they can work at a restaurant. You need to make sure you have video evidence, some kind of audio evidence, and some kind of written evidence, because people won't mind lying on you. Like I said, he put this guy in jail over a lie.
Corner. Zoom in.
Would you want a person like that pulling you over or patrolling the streets, knowing that they've lied on at least one person?
At 6:38, 1 minute after
It
the
shows a lack of integrity, and then he has a history of this, and it shows a lack of accountability of the sheriff department. Because you'll see later on that they pretty much are not trying to take responsibility either.
incident, you can
What I've noticed is what people try to do is they'll try to deny, they'll try to deflect, and they'll try to use plausible deniability. People, if you want to know why this country is going down, it's because at least half of the people in this country lack integrity, lack accountability, and they just pretending to be something that they not. Pretending to be Christians, pretending to be holier than thou, pretending to be patriots. It's just all pretend. Pretend it's just crazy. Pretending to be pro-black, pretending to be pro-white. The pro-blacks will sell out black people just as fast as the white supremacists will sell out white people.
see folks watching Matthew Stafford throw a touchdown to Cooper Kupp. The deputy certified under oath these facts are false and instead swore this person.
He said under oath
Facts are
he
false.
swore that was false, even though it's video evidence. We can clearly see that that's not him driving that truck, and we got the time step that we can clearly see that that's him watching the game. So the deputy is lying. How come the deputy still has a job?
Watching Matthew Stafford throw a touchdown to Cooper
I'll
Cup.
tell you why, because the police force, they don't want to take responsibility, and they don't mind corruption. I don't know if they don't want to take responsibility. That's why I can come to that conclusion. But we definitely know they don't mind corruption if he's still on the force, and we can clearly see that all the evidence points to the officer line, the deputy line.
The deputy certified
I just state the obvious and state the facts, and that's a fact. That's not opinion.
under oath these facts are false.
This is the other thing, you know, you hear people talk about, well, our state don't have any money, our government don't have any money. Well, one of the reasons is people in these government agencies, like the police, like some of the other people that mismanage funds, that are politicians. We have three politicians here in our city that just got arrested, Democrat and Republican, for corruption. So they're costing the city money, they're costing the states money, they costing the country money because of these lawsuits. Because they, like I said, man, most of the people in these positions, I won't say most of them, but I will say a lot of people in positions are actually not competent. Because what would be competent is somebody doing their job correctly and efficiently without costing the company money in lawsuits, which is what this deputy is going to do.
And instead swore this person is Jared Folks.
Is it clear to you that that's not your client?
Without a doubt, it's a
Let me just go back
it's
to that
a
though.
Person down to Cooper.
We can see the evidence 2/13/2022 at the same time that the accident happened. And the officer is saying the other guy, who we can clearly see is skinnier and has hair, he's saying that that's this guy, Mr. Folks. It's crazy, man. And he did it under oath. So obviously, like, swearing under God, promising to tell the truth, it means nothing to a lot of people. The whole God thing, it means nothing to a lot of people. It's just a facade.
Cup. The deputy certified
It's a facade to hide a mental sickness, they psychosis.
throw a touchdown to Cooper Cup. The deputy certified under oath these facts are false and instead swore this person is Jared Folks.
Is it clear to you that that's not your client?
without a doubt, it's a brown skinned gentleman. I mean, it's darker skin. It's hard to tell from their video, but my client is almost 6 feet tall and he's bald. And this gentleman had dark hair, dark complected, and had a beard and a mustache. And again, they were both dark black.
Yet the deputy swore your client was on the scene.
Yes, sir. Well, let me back this up. He had to, because the crime of hit and run driving necessitates that somebody who committed that crime, that the driver of the vehicle that committed that crime.
The investigating
So he wasn't even there. So it's a false statement right there.
Committed that crime.
The investigating deputy Vincenzo
Committed that crime. Well, let me back this up. He had to, because the crime of hit and run driving necessitates that somebody who committed that crime, that the driver of the vehicle that committed that crime.
The investigating deputy Vincenzo Sonato has a history of misconduct on the job. In 2020 and 2020, Sonato has a history of misconduct on the job. The investigating deputy Vincenzo Sonato has a history of misconduct on the job. In 2020 and 2021, he served 5 separate suspensions, totaling 7 days for violation. Vincenzo Sonato has a history of
So
misconduct
they
on
okay
the
with
job. In
misconduct.
2020 and 2021, he served 5 separate suspensions, totaling 7 days
That
for
sheriff's
violations on the
officer's
job.
They okay
In
with
one
it.
case, he got into an argument with a supervisor. In another,
How
drove
many
80
other
miles
innocent
per hour
people
in a
has he put in
45.
jail?
That crime.
The investigating deputy Vincenzo Sonato has a history of
Black
misconduct on
women
the job.
perish.
In 2020 and 2021, he served 5 separate suspensions, totaling 7 days for violations on the job. In one case, he got into an argument with a supervisor. In another, drove 80 miles per hour in a 45-mile-per-hour zone during inclement weather. with the suspect in the back seat. And one, Sonato backed into a vehicle, then left without telling the owner
He
or
did a hit
reporting
and
the
run.
incident. Sonato's also lost his take.
What a hypocrite. This is the other thing about these psychopaths and sociopaths. Very hypocritical people. He committed a hit and run.
With the suspect in the back seat. And one, Sonato backed into a vehicle, then left without telling the owner or reporting the incident. Sonato's also lost his take-home car privileges multiple times, including once when he ran a red light, driving over 100 miles per hour without lights or sirens on the way to a call. Since 2020, he's had another 8 separate complaints that were unfounded or where he was exonerated, including 3 this year. Plaquemines Parish Sheriff Jerry Turlich owned a house in the subdivision where the incident took place.
Jerry Turlich, he knows what's going on and he's okay with it. Lack of integrity. Don't ever let these people try to tell you that they have no moral standing.
Plaquemines Parish Sheriff Jerry Turlich owned a house in the subdivision where the incident took place. He sold it less than a month before the arrest. The Plaquemines Parish Sheriff declined to comment, citing a pending case, but in response to the prior sanctions against Deputy Sonato, a spokesperson wrote they do not have any bearings in this investigation and do not put any questions into his competency or credibility as a deputy with PPSO. His sanctions were based on performance issues that were not related to his investigative abilities or competency.
How has this not been thrown out yet?
I don't know. I don't control the DA's office in Plaquemines Parish. And according to them, they screen the cases and they evaluate them based on the screening and make a decision.
Folks lives in Kenner. In February of 2022, Plaquemines asked Kenner police to arrest him. The charges, both misdemeanors, hit and run. And Folks lives in Kenner. In February of 2022, Plaquemines asked Kenner police to arrest him. The charges, both misdemeanors, hit and run.
So he got arrested for
insurance, even though Folks claims he has it. Kenner police placed Folks in this holding cell over President's Day weekend until Plaquemines Parish picked him up, and he was able.
So he can be arrested for not having insurance, but the officer can have several complaints and not be arrested or fired. I'll let you know, man. Corruption. And that's why, it's like at the end of the day, it's like, what, with the country going down, it is what it is. Let them suffer with the rest of us, because they part of the problem.
Hit and run, and for not having insurance, even though Folks claims he has it. Kenner police place Folks in this holding cell over President's Day weekend
that this country
until Plaquemines Parish picked him up, and he was able to bond out.
That's the old two-party two-step, oldest trick in the book. That makes you sit for the whole weekend, and you really can't get out because you have to have 2 different jurisdictions, quote, bond you out or release you. And so what they did was kind of dirty to this guy to make him sit for 2 or 3 days in jail.
This is on purpose to arrest him that day to make him sit through the weekend.
I've been seeing it for 30 years.
Fox 8 legal analyst Joe Raspani says the video evidence shows the deputy gave a false statement in the affidavit.
Well, you're not supposed to swear out an affidavit.
State legal analyst Joe Raspani says the video evidence shows the deputy gave a false statement in the affidavit.
Well, you're not supposed to swear out an affidavit that you know not to be true. 30 years.
Fox 8 legal analyst Joe Raspani says the video evidence shows the deputy gave a false statement in the affidavit.
Well, you're not supposed to swear out an affidavit that you know not to be true. So if he's swearing out a false affidavit for a arrest warrant, that's not kosher. I don't get why they would almost purposefully inculpate themselves into a bad
wasting your taxpayer dollars
like that.
In Louisiana.
It clearly shows that he wasn't there.
We emailed the DA's office for comment. At the time, they couldn't because of a pending case. But 3 weeks after we started asking questions, the DA's office dropped the charges. That same day, though, Folks was served with.
Evil people will try to get away with abuse of power if they think they can't get it, if they think they won't have any consequences. And who's responsible is the sheriff and anybody else is who is involved, the deputy and anybody else who knows. And we're gonna get into all that also.
With papers, a civil lawsuit brought by the subdivision.
So I walked into the courtroom. Was
Let me
hoping.
rewind that.
We emailed the DA's office for comment. At the time, they couldn't because of a pending case. But 3 weeks after we started asking questions, the DA's office dropped the charges.
Now
But
listen to that.
3 weeks after we started asking questions, the DA's office dropped the charges. That same day, though, folks was served with papers. A civil lawsuit brought by the
So they dropped the charges.
subdivision.
So I walked into the courtroom. Was hoping to get the case dismissed. The case was dismissed, and I had an officer waiting there to serve me additional papers for damages. I definitely thought it was going to be behind me.
The civil suit cites many of the false findings in the arrest warrant. Fox 8 legal analyst Joe Raspani says the investigating officer, Sonato, should face his own investigation and possibly sanctions based on those false findings. Folks filed a federal lawsuit against the Plaquemines Parish Sheriff and Deputy Sonato for false arrest. Federal lawsuit against the Plaquemines Parish Sheriff and Deputy Sonato for false arrest and imprisonment, saying the facts in this case show the Plaquemines Parish Sheriff had a reckless disregard for the truth.
You know, it's a major disruption to, you know, my business, my daily life, and just also hanging over my head because at any point they have the footage to show that it wasn't me.
Right.
We
So they call it this man stress. What if this guy have a stroke or a heart attack because he's dealing with this stress? Or what if his business, he loses business? Like this is wild. But he's not the only one, and I mean it happens all the time. Good thing is, what we can do is bring attention to these kind of issues and hold people responsible. Posts like this need to be castigated and really excommunicated from society because these are uncivilized people. These are people that they're sick. You can't. The reason they sick is because they can't help but do it. And there's going to be good police officers and bad police officers. When you see the bad ones, you got to identify them. You can't protect them because silence is compliance, and corruption is a culture,
reached out to the attorney for the Parks of Plaquemines Subdivision
or it
Homeowners
can be.
Association. In a statement, Jacob Bro said, "Our firm has had and has no involvement in the criminal matter and is unable to comment on such. As to the civil lawsuit, it was filed to preserve the property damage claim of the Park Homeowners Association for the costs of repair of its gate. To date, we have been provided nothing from Airtight Construction LLC or Mr. Folks." The spokesperson for the Plaquemines Parish Sheriff's Office sent another response late this evening regarding Folks' arrest that says, in part, his refusal to cooperate in the investigation hindered his ability and responsibility as a business owner to mitigate the situation. Although the hit and run charges was dropped against Mr. Folks, this does not necessarily absolve his criminal involvement and culpability in this incident because it is a fact that it was Mr. Folks' company vehicle. That is still an ongoing investigation. In tonight's statement, that the sheriff's office never addressed why they arrested and charged Folks, even though video evidence shows
Right,
he
they
wasn't
won't.
at the scene of the alleged crime.
They
I
just like
actually used to
deflected.
sell apartments for $9.45 an hour.
I had a wife and 2 kids.
You just got to continue to press these people and get an answer because you know they don't want to be embarrassed. But I mean, it is what it is. So I'm just go to some more of that story. And then I'm trying to talk to this guy.
One Plaquemines Parish deputy has had more than a dozen complaints filed against him in the past 3 years.
But there's
A
one
dozen, more than a dozen
One
complaints.
Plaquemines Parish deputy has had more than a dozen complaints filed against him in the past 3 years.
3
There's one
years.
thing in common.
Where's the DOJ? Where's the investigation?
With every time he was exonerated, and that has a law professor questioning whether there's a conflict of interest within the department. Here's our latest investigation.
This is shocking. It's outrageous. It's inexplicable. It is so patently wrong.
Kenner resident Jared Folks spent 72 hours inside this holding cell trying to get some sleep on a metal bench, pacing to kill time. Locked up because a deputy in Plaquemines Parish swore in an affidavit.
So they basically tortured this guy. These people are sadistic, degenerates. They basically tortured the guy. An innocent man they tortured. An innocent white man at that.
Folks who you see right here is the
You
same
can't,
person you see here.
like Project Pass said, don't say ever. You can't help out everybody. Everybody ain't worth saving, and everybody don't want to be saved. Folks like this, if you follow the laws of success, all the self-help gurus, the Bob Proctors, uh, Les Browns, Dennis Waitley's, Jim Rohns, they say avoid evil, sick, negative people like that officer or that deputy.
Here. And what that
Because what are they going to do? They're going to cause problems for you.
deputy calls high quality surveillance video.
Well, you're not supposed to swear out an affidavit that you know not to be true. So if he's swearing out a false affidavit for a arrest warrant, that's not kosher.
That deputy, Vincenzo Sonato, investigated Folks in 2022 and claims he was involved in a hit and run at the Park Plaquemines subdivision where a truck hit a gate. Problem is, it wasn't Folks driving the vehicle in question. Here's the exact time of the incident in Plaquemines Parish. At the same time, here's Folks in Kenner watching the Super Bowl at his office. A subcontractor.
This also is I wanted to point out something else. When people say everything is a matter of your choice, your decisions, no, sometimes people can make a decision and put you in a bad situation. Sometimes it's not your fault, but it's up to you to take responsibility to make the situation better. You may have to fight some sick folks,
Was actually
some
driving
haters. At the end of the day, the deputy is a hater.
the vehicle and called Folks after he said the subdivision gate malfunctioned.
I said the gate
More than likely, very, very, very unhappy person.
is malfunctioned. Do you have contact information for the homeowners association? That way we can reach out to them, man, and send it in the morning. He said, basically free the truck and we'll contact the, homeowners association and get the repairs done to the truck.
After we asked questions, the Plaquemines district attorney dismissed the case, and the sheriff said
Again, after they asked questions, they dismissed the case. If they wouldn't ask questions, they would have more than likely proceeded to railroading this guy.
After we asked questions, the Plaquemines district attorney dismissed the case, and the sheriff says
And what kills me is the weak-minded, simple-minded folks that more than likely are haters too, that would just say blindly back to blue, knowing that we got people like this on the force, and knowing if it was them that had to go through the same thing that this guy would go through, they wouldn't be happy with it.
the investigating officer Vincenzo Sonato had.
That's why you just need to get rich, and basically, like 50 Cent said, get rich or die trying, and then you do what you can to have as much power and influence to change the world in a positive way. Because trying to force these sick folks, it's not going to work.
Had been reassigned
Or
pending
you have to force them, because if you wait them to voluntarily do it, it's not in them.
an investigation. And that's where this story takes a turn. The investigating deputy
And I just say this because you have to understand, like folks
Sonato
like
has
this, when they put up against other people, they just don't compare. So it's a lot of hate and jealousy, and they have that pent up frustration. So they try to take it out on people. They try to abuse power. They do underhanded stuff. Never was the prom king. Never was the popular guy in school. Never was the one that women were attracted to.
a history of misconduct on the job.
Watch out for unattractive people.
In 2020 and 21, he served 5 separate suspensions, totaling 7 days for violations on the job. In one case, he got into an argument with a supervisor. In another, drove 80 miles per hour in a 45-mile-per-hour zone during inclement weather with a
Like, does he have something on some people? Like, what's going on?
suspect in the back seat.
He should
And
never be able to get a job with a badge.
one Sonato backed into a vehicle, then left without telling the owner or
Where's the psych profile?
reporting the incident. Sonato's also lost his take-home car privileges multiple times, including once when he ran a red light, driving over 100 miles per hour without lights or sirens on the way to a call.
Wow.
Since 2020, he's had another 8 separate complaints that were unfounded or where he was exonerated, including 3 just this year. The Plaquemines internal affairs officer investigating all 8 of those complaints where no wrongdoing was found was Lieutenant Jennifer
Now,
Daigle Johnson.
pay attention to that. Is he banging this lady or what?
No wrongdoing was found. The Plaquemines internal affairs officer investigating all
Like I
8 of those
said,
complaints were
corruption is usually like a cultural thing.
Plaquemines internal affairs.
It's a culture of corruption, most more than likely, because if they willing to put up with it, most more than likely, it's culturally. It's cultural. Like it's something that they allow in that organization.
Officer investigating all 8 of those complaints where no wrongdoing was found was Lieutenant Jennifer Daigle Johnson.
Same
It just
officer.
so happens she is the same officer listed on the affidavit who helped Sonato authenticate what they call
Be fired.
Police force at Plaquemines Parish. The one that this officer chose to confirm his assessment of this video is this internal affairs officer who I would think doesn't function in this fashion. Normally, when you're in internal affairs, that's a full-time job. You don't also do this other kind of thing. You don't also do doesn't function in this fashion. Normally, when you're in internal affairs, that's a full-time job. You don't also do this other kind of thing. So that's really what's troubling to me.
Looking at it another way, at the same time Lieutenant Jennifer Daigle Johnson had active ongoing investigations against Sonato, she also worked with him, authenticating this video, helping lead to Folk's false arrest.
That's a
This
conflict of
video,
interest.
helping lead, also worked with him, authenticating this video, helping lead to Folk's false arrest.
There's clearly a conflict of interest. There's no question about it. If you're an internal affairs officer and you're investigating
I
charges
wouldn't want
against
these people on the force because you can't trust them. And then we dealing with situations that you have to have people with the utmost integrity, and when they don't have it, you have to get them out of there because it's you just killing public trust.
Against Sonato, she also worked with him, authenticating this video, helping lead to Folk's false arrest.
there's clearly a conflict of interest. There's no question about it. If you're an internal affairs officer and you're investigating charges against police officer X, and while you're doing that, you're also working with police officer X on some sort of official police business unrelated to these charges, that's impossible. There has to be clear rules against this in the parish police officers manual. And even if there's not, no reasonable investigator would do such a thing. And even if there's not, no reasonable investigator would do such a thing. Manual. And even if there's not, no reasonable investigator would do such a thing. There has to be a complete wall of separation between the people who do the investigation and the investigators.
That's like your
But
wife
the fact that this guy
doing an
asked her to
investigation against
confirm
you.
suggests, only suggests, there's some prior relationship between the two of them. Investigators. But the between the people who do the investigation and the investigators. But the fact that this guy asked her to confirm suggests, only suggests, there's some prior relationship between the two of them beyond investigator and subject of investigation.
Are they in an intimate relationship? Are any of them married?
We asked the sheriff's office who would be conducting the internal investigation into Sonato in the Folks case. A spokesperson responded late this afternoon that Daigle Johnson won't be overseeing the case, but says the commander of the Internal Affairs Division, Major Michael Martin, is in charge of the investigation.
Does the sheriff need an outside agency or
Of
someone
course.
other than internal affairs investigating him, since there may be a conflict with that office?
Well, it certainly shouldn't be Officer Johnson, that's for sure. Um, uh, it's, again, it may be her lack of integrity that's involved here, not the entire
Damn.
office. Of integrity that's involved here, her lack of integrity. Again, it may be her lack of integrity that's involved here, not the entire office. But if I were the sheriff and I had a situation like this, first of all, I would have investigated it 8 months ago, not now. And
Right.
certainly with the
So maybe
string
the
of
sheriff
adjudications of the
obviously
prior
had the lack of
investigations
integrity
against him,
also.
all of which found no cause. Adjudications of the prior investigations against him, all of which found no cause. All of them, every one of them, suggest maybe they're fairly lax in how they're investigating these things, and doesn't give me a whole lot of confidence that they're going to do the right thing
This
this time,
guy,
particularly because
Joel
they
Friedman,
waited
he's
so long
pretty
and only
sharp guy.
until they had their whole lot of confidence that they're going to do the right thing this time, particularly because they waited so long and only until they had their finger caught in the cookie jar by you.
Even though the DA dismissed
Right.
the charge,
Their finger caught in the cookie jar by you. They're going to do the right thing this time, particularly because they waited so long and only until they had their finger caught in the cookie jar by you.
Even though the DA dismissed the charges, the sheriff's office spokesperson defended the agency's investigation into Folks. In a statement, the office says while being questioned, Folks stopped answering questions and said he wanted to speak to his attorney.
Which is
The
his right,
spokesperson saying this refusal
especially when he's dealing with people that's lying on him. I mean, gracious.
to cooperate hindered his ability and
I would not cooperate with people that lack integrity and they're lying on you.
responsibility to mitigate the situation. Joel Friedman says this statement and this story shows a law enforcement agency ignoring a clear conflict of interest and an officer arresting a suspect for exercising his right to remain silent.
When
Damn.
somebody's charged by the
Right to remain silent. Ignoring a clear conflict of interest and an officer arresting a suspect for exercising his right to remain silent.
when somebody's charged by the police, it's not their obligation to prove their innocence. It's the police department's obligation to find the facts to determine whether there is guilt or not. Remaining silent is not a problem. And of course, in fact, you have a constitutional right to remain silent once you've been interrogated and indicated that you are a person under suspicion. So that's a makeshift argument. I don't even believe the sheriff believes it. I think the sheriff is just humiliated by the fact that this has gone on and was trying to sweep it under the rug and had done so until you unearthed it.
While the
Not remaining silent
Let's
is
hear this
their
again.
innocence.
Beck for exercising his right to remain conflict of interest and an officer arresting a suspect for exercising his right to remain silent.
When somebody's charged by the police, it's not their obligation to prove their innocence. It's the police department's obligation to find the facts to determine whether there is guilt or not. Remaining silent is not a problem. And of course, in fact, you have a constitutional right to remain silent once you've been interrogated and indicated that you are a person under suspicion. So that's a makeshift argument. I don't even believe the sheriff believes it. I think the sheriff is just humiliated by the fact that this has gone on and was trying to sweep it under the rug and had done so until you unearthed it.
While the Plaquemines DA dismissed the case against Folks, the parks.
And this shows too. This is why they don't like when I say they. A lot of people who are corrupt, a lot of people that are in positions like the sheriff, they don't like a lot of people to have money. This is why when people do have money, they can kind of just flex their muscle and the charges can get dropped because if you got money, you can just go ahead and go into their past, get the private investigator, and just pull up, hire good lawyers, and you can just show how they corrupt, and you'll actually get them out of a job. So this is why a lot of people, whether it be, a lot of people that are corrupt, they don't like to see, especially like people in power, they don't like to see other people with money who can challenge that because you can easily bring them down with money.
Plaquemine subdivision has filed a civil lawsuit against Folks, citing many of the same claims in the dismissed case. Meantime, Folks filed a federal lawsuit against the Plaquemines Parish Sheriff and Deputy Sonato for false arrest and imprisonment.
All right, so I'm gonna do one more here that I saw, and it's just like a brief follow up. It's a real short one, but yeah, I'm gonna follow up with some of these guys. I already reached out to the Mr. Folks, and I want to see what's going on with this case if they can talk about it. Let me pull up this last story.
Following breaking news at this hour, the Plaquemines Parish Sheriff's Office launches an internal investigation into a frequently sanctioned deputy.
This comes just days after the deputy's actions were highlighted in a Fox 8 investigation. A sheriff's office spokesman tells Fox 8 deputy Vincenzo Sonato has been reassigned pending that investigation.
Now,
Our report,
if this guy Zurich, if he wouldn't have Lee Zurich, if he wouldn't have done the investigation, this stuff that guy would have been railroaded, and this stuff would have been continue to happen.
showed that Sonato swore in an affidavit that
This
Jared
is why we need real journalism, like real, investigative journalists with integrity.
Folks was on the scene of a crash in the parks of Plaquemines and Super Bowl
Just think about how many other lives did this guy ruin, and then the sheriff's department ruined.
Sunday of 2022. However, we obtained video from Folks' office in Kenner, 23 miles away.
And that's the other thing. This is why we need high standards. When we dealing with folks in positions like this, and teachers and politicians, if you are in control of other people's lives and you can make or break somebody or put somebody in jail, then you definitely need to be under the highest scrutiny.
From the crash, where he was watching the Super Bowl at the same time Sonato swore he was on the scene. Sonato's affidavit led the judge to issue an arrest warrant.
Now he said the deputy said he was on the scene.
On the scene. Sonato's affidavit led the judge to issue an arrest warrant for Folks shortly after we started asking.
Now, the people of Louisiana, your tax dollars are going to be wasted because, there's no case. They have no. We know it's a lie.
Questions the Plaquemines.
They can't fight it. It's a lie, so they're going to have to pay up.
Parish DA dropped those charges. However, Folks still faces a civil lawsuit brought by the subdivision
that
still
got a civil
several
lawsuit
of the false claims in Sonato's affidavit.
Based off of the false claims.
Sonato has a history of misconduct on the job. In 2020 and 21, he served 5 separate suspensions, tallying 7 days. Sonato also lost his take-home car privileges multiple times, including once when he ran a red light driving more than including home car 7 days.
So look, Charlie got to go.
Sonato also lost his take-home car privileges multiple times, including once when he ran a red light driving more than 100 miles per hour without lights or sirens on the way to a call. Again tonight, the Plaquemines Parish Sheriff's Office tells Fox 8 it has launched an internal investigation into Sonato and that he has been reassigned.
He should be fired. But hey, it is what it is. So go ahead, let him stay on there, and then somebody else file a lawsuit against him, because they'll try to keep it quiet. But somebody else will file a lawsuit against him. They'll be paying up again. Hey, but I appreciate anybody watching this, and until next time.